Hello, this is your Orientationalist in all things Essad Bey, Kurban Said and Ali and Nino. Last year, in February 2021, Azerbaijani television started a new series called ilin, adamları, meaning people of the century, in which they were introducing famous people from Azerbaijan. On March 28th of 2021, they aired the episode about Kurban Said, who is, of course, famous for his beautiful novel Ali and Nino. I was interviewed for this program, so I gave them an overview of Kurban Said's life in a nutshell, where he was born, where he grew up, how he became Essad Bey, and what had happened that he had to choose his new name, Kurban Said. Many people's research, and for obvious reasons, show that Kurban Said was Lev Nussbaum, son of Jewish parents. He converted to Islam in August of 1922 in Berlin. But because he was Jewish born, he got excluded from the German Writers' Association in 1935. So this meant that his books couldn't be sold anymore, and new books couldn't be published in Germany. In other words, he lost his income. That's why Essad Bey started talking with Ernst Peter Thal of the Thal Publishing House in 1936. And it was Thal's business model to publish books of Jewish authors under false names and register that false name under someone else. So Essad Bey became Kurban Said, and the name was registered under his close friend Elfriede Ehrenfels. Also, the contract was made out to her name. So that was the short version. Now back to the program of AzTV. After it aired, I had to learn that the directors had chosen to follow the other narrative about Essad Bey's or Kurban Said's life, namely that he was born as a Muslim and that his real name was Essad Bey. For this notion, we have only one single source from 1942, when, in a small scientific magazine for Orientalism in Rome called Oriente Moderno, an article about Essad Bey was published. Its author was Jamil Vakamatsara, who was a very good friend of Essad's. Now, what does this article say? I will give you here a few examples of wrong statements which pertain to the AzTV television production. 1. Jews were absolutely forbidden to live in the city center, and because Essad lived there, he could not have been a Jew. Wrong. Because the total opposite is true. The Nussbaums really lived in the city center. We know the old address. If I were to describe the location of the house today, I would simply say it is across the street from off the right side of the Hard Rock Cafe in Baku. So that statement is clearly not true. Jews did very well live in the city center. 2. Jews couldn't own oil wells. Well, although Essad Bey always said that they had owned oil wells, there is no proof that this is true. But we know for sure that Abraham was in the oil transport business. 3. Essad's mother descended from a noble family. No, wrong. Basia Davidovna Slutsky came from a small village called Petrovichi, which is today a city in Russia near the Belarusian border. Their family name Slutsky is to this day a very well-known Jewish last name. 4. When the boy Essad's parents had died, he lived with his maternal uncle Abraham Nussbaum, who simply declared the boy Jewish. Now, how is that supposed to have happened? Judaism makes it very hard to convert. You can't simply declare someone to be Jewish. To be Jewish, the best thing is to have a Jewish mother. So here we go, Lev had one. 5. Essad's father's name was Ibrahim Arslan-Olu. No, his name was Abraham Nussbaum, and he was born in Tiflis. Also, over the years, many people tried to find a certain Ibrahim Arslan-Olu in Baku, but no person by that name ever lived there. It is quite obvious that Essad Bey simply translated his father's name Abraham into Ibrahim, which is the Arabic version. Now, why is this old article with all that false information so important? Because all people that claim today that Essad was a born Muslim use exactly this article as their source, and this article alone, because it is the only source for the notion that Essad Bey was a born Muslim. But you can't just read this article and pretend to know what was really happening. So, if you are studying Jamil's short biography of Essad Bey, you must consider the fascist times in which it was written. But all I see is that some people simply dashed at all these fabricated details and trumpeted them out as the truth. Sorry to say, but there was no trace of discernment. Now, back to that program on AzTV. I would like to look for you at a brief moderation which begins at 2 minutes and 30 seconds into the program, and it is just over a minute long. I would like to explain everything that's wrong with it, and here a little spoiler. Everything is wrong. Let's begin. On 20th of October of 1905, a woman, Alice Sophia Slutsky, gives birth on the train while she comes from Zurich to Baku. Okay, so they are saying his mother was Alice Sophia Slutsky. I wonder where that name comes from. Lev Nussbaum's, or if you like, Essad Bey's mother's name was Basia Davidovna Slutsky. If you read somewhere that her name was Berta, that's the Russified version of Basia. So Berta or Basia, that's Essad's or Lev's mother. The name they mention, Ali Sophia, is a compound of two names of women from Lev's life. Alice was his nanny, Alice Schulte, and Sophia was one of Lev's aunts, Sophia Slutsky, his mother's younger sister. To me, it sounds as if they put the first names of women from Lev's life into a cup and shuffled it, and out came Alice Sophia. Essad writes publicly about this only one single time, in 1931, in that autobiographical article in the Berlin newspaper The Literary World. He says, "I was born during the first Russian railroad strike in the middle of the Russian steppe between Europe and Asia, when my mother was traveling from Zurich, the seat of the Russian revolutionaries, to Baku, the residence of my family." Now, this statement we have to break up into several parts. Let's begin with, I was born in the middle of the Russian steppe between Europe and Asia. Now, when Essad entered Germany in 1921, that was 10 years before he wrote this about the train, his passport clearly said that he was born in Kiev. We have proof of that. The still existing paper trail suggests that latest from 1922, he only spoke of Baku as his birthplace, and to which ends he went to make the world believe that, I must talk about in another video. So, was he now born on a train, as he wrote in that article, or was he born in a city, Baku as he claimed, or Kiev as the passport said? Let me tell you something. If Essad, or young Lev for that matter, had been born on a train, everyone in his life would have known it. You see, Essad's classmate Alexander Brylov has written that Essad was a real storyteller, that he used to tell his anecdotes with a mix of earnestness and burlesque. In other words, he loved to be pompous and clownish at the same time. So, as a theatrical storyteller, even in his youth, can you imagine that a guy like this would not talk about being born on a train, having all his classmates as an audience? Of course he would have. Brylov would have never missed telling us about Essad being born on a train, but instead Brylov and later Uma Ehrenfels, they all said that Essad was born in Baku, which wasn't true either, but that's what Essad had told them, and that's why they all said it later. Now, what other proof do we have that the author of Nino was born in Kiev? Simply, we have the handwritten entry of his birth in the synagogue book from Kiev. It reads, number 684, Lev, born on 20th of October, 4th Heshvana. The rite of circumcision was performed on 27th of October, 11th Heshvana, that's a Jewish month, of the year 1905. Parents, the Tiflis citizen Abraham Leibuzovich Nusimbaum, mother Basia Davidovna. So, now about that train ride of that woman called Slutsky going from Zurich to wherever she went. There was indeed a woman called Slutsky who definitely went from Zurich to Russia by train, and her name was Berta Bronislavovna Slutsky, or Slutskaya. Berta, you notice? As I said before, Berta is the Russian version of Basia, Lev's mother. Berta Bronislavovna later called herself Vera. She was an active revolutionary and indeed lived in Switzerland and in Germany for a while. But that was between 1909 and 1912. She got killed in a revolutionary incident in 1917 and gained some fame from that. But how could Essad Bey have known about her? Well, in 1919, there was a very popular book called 10 Days That Shook the World by John Reed. This was the German edition from 1922. The author John Reed writes about Vera Slutsky in this book. It is a fact that Essad was obsessed by the Russian Revolution, and we can take it for granted, or at least I take it for granted, that he knew this book and read it. It's a possibility that when he read about this Russian woman who was called Slutsky, like his mother, and this woman lived in Zurich and at one point went back to Russia, here he might have gotten the idea for his crazy story for being born on a train. And just imagine giving birth on a train. Does that mean Basia or Berta went to Zurich already pregnant? I checked the internet about the distances, and you see that's true for everything that was written in pre-internet times. Back then, everybody could just write what they wanted. It was extremely difficult to check facts. Today, all information is just a few clicks away. Now, going from Baku to Kiev is alone 1,870 kilometers. Kiev-Berlin is 1,200 kilometers, and Berlin-Zurich is nearly 700 kilometers. So, we are talking about sitting on rattling trains day in and day out for nearly 4,000 kilometers in 1905, being pregnant? No, sorry, I don't believe that. To make a long story short, Lev Nusimbaum and therefore Essad Bey was born in Kiev. Now to the next sentence. They named the baby Essad after his father, Ibrahim's father. Well, they named the baby Lev after Abraham's father, whose name was Leib. How do we know that? Because Abraham's patronym was Leibuzovich, which means son of Leib. And Leib is Yiddish for lion or Lev. Newborn boys usually were named after their grandfather, so it was the case with Lev. Next sentence. In translation, Essad means lion, and in Russian it is Lev. That is why his mother called him Lev. So they named him Essad, but because it means lion in Russian, the mother called him Lev. Really? I think that's a bit upside down. No, they baptized him Lev, and later the whole family called him Lyovushka. His first cousin in Paris told me that when I talked to him in 2014 and 2016. Okay, to the next sentence. Alicia was an active revolutionary, and it is no secret that she sent her husband's money to the Bolsheviks. Okay, now they're calling her Alicia. Now, the only reference from Essad's own pen we have about Bazia giving money to the Bolsheviks is from a book review Essad Bey had written himself about his own book, Blood and Oil in the Orient, which was his first book. The last sentence of this text is, "My mother financed Stalin's secret print shops with her diamonds." Nowhere else he speaks about it, at least not to my knowledge. In his letters to Pima Andrei, he repeatedly says that he doesn't know anything about his mother because no one ever wanted to talk about her, certainly not his father and not his aunt, Bazia's youngest sister Tamara. Sadly, Essad also wrote to Pima that he doesn't even know how his mother looked like. He had never seen a photo of hers. So to say it is no secret what his mother did, I am not sure if this is clean journalism. Okay, to the next sentence. That is why there were so many arguments in the family. Well, I think this is a funny one, because it sounds as if they walked by the Nusimbam house and they heard the yelling of the parents through the open window. Next sentence. Alicia committed suicide when Essad was 4 years old. Well, actually when he was 5 years and 8 months old. Next sentence. These documents confirm that Essad was not born in Kiev and Baku. These documents, well, in fact this is actually true. There was no child named Essad who was born either in Kiev or in Baku. But Lev Nusimbam was born in Kiev, and it is an established fact that both names belong to the same person. At minute 319, they are even showing a document confirming that Lev Nusimbam's birth was registered in the synagogue of Kiev. Next sentence. The truth about his true nationality is mysterious and complicated. Well, mysterious? Today not anymore. Complicated? Perhaps. They were Russian Jews, and by the way, Russian was their native language, so it was Lev's first language. From the Nusimbam's passports, we know that they had been Russian subjects, and later, for the rest of his life, Essad or Lev would remain stateless. Next sentence. Leo, Lev and Essad have the same meaning, the same with his father's name, Ibrahim and Abraham. That is why in this topic there is no exact proof. Well, his father's name was Abraham and not Ibrahim, which is just the Arab version of Abraham. That's why when Essad, when he lived his miserable life in Positano, just translated Abraham into Ibrahim so he could come up with a Muslim heritage, because he felt he had to protect himself. And you see, that's why he came up with the whole story with a Muslim heritage in the first place. There is nothing wrong with that. We just need to read this text properly. We cannot say, oh, see, here it is printed, so it must be true. That would be a bit too easy. Generally, I would say that the notion of this program was that some people don't want Essad Bey to be Jewish. I don't know why. But this explains why Jamil Vakamatzara's article was used to propagate this legend. Obviously, no one who is promoting Jamil's nonsense today has thought about the political and personal circumstances during the time this article was written, what was going on in Essad's life back then, why he thought he needed to throw those fake smoke grenades. Essad's life was in danger, plus the many opioids he had taken to treat his pain had probably added to his natural disposition for paranoid behavior. And even more, if he had been a born Muslim, why would he have to live in hiding in Positano anyway? It may be surprising for you to hear, but the Nazis, they had no problems with Muslims. After all, they were the enemies of the Jews. And as the old saying goes, the enemy of my enemy is my friend. Believe it or not, but that was the policy of the Nazis. So, in order to work with Jamil's article constructively, one should be able to employ discernment. I tried to discuss this problem with the filmmakers, but they simply said many documents were lost. But what this really means is this. They are building a case on lost documents, documents no one has seen, no one knows what's in them, or lost documents they hope that they contain the things they need for their theory. So these never-seen documents are true, and at the same time they are rejecting the existing documents, which tell a very simple story. Think about that. But that is the fruit of this program. The main problem in all of this is the following. Journalists are usually doing a great job in presenting the facts they are being told and writing about them or making films about them. But the flip side of the coin is that journalists usually have no real idea of the background, so they easily fall prey to false notions. And that's exactly what had happened here. It is just unfortunate for them. They did have another voice, me, who told them the truth. Well, now I gave you an impression of what all can go wrong in a moderation of 1 minute and 10 seconds. I hope you find it interesting, and if so, please like and subscribe and write me your questions in the comments below. Thank you, and until soon, goodbye.